All right, about to get started with Wellness Wednesday, Minority Mental Health Month. Having some amazing conversation today with Katrina. Let's go live with her now.
Hi.
Yes, hello. Another Wednesday. It's good to see you.
Yeah, you too. How are you?
How am I? I'm good. It's been a very emotionally open day. But I'm
Okay.
embracing that. Yeah. A lot of feelings from myself and others have been really present today, but I'm okay with that. What
Okay.
about you? Yeah.
Um, I'm okay. I'm okay. I feel like the last week was hectic and things are starting to settle down a little bit, so that always feels kind of nice.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, and I'm happy to be here and have this conversation today.
Yes. Same. Same. I guess we can do our quick intros just so that if anybody new is joining in, they know who they're looking at. I can
Yeah.
kick us off. So my name is Kayla. I am a yoga psychotherapist and the founder of The Well Healing. Very excited to be having these conversations with my homegirl, Katrina, each Wednesday this month to talk about mental wellness and community wellness and the current multiple pandemics like we are
Right.
navigating right now. And this is all leading up to a really awesome event that we are going to do together virtually so that we can continue to practice care as a community. So thank you all for joining us. I'm seeing the highs and hellos. Thank you for being here. And this is the lovely Katrina.
Yeah, hello everyone. My name is Katrina. I am also a yoga psychotherapist, holistic therapist, and founder of Manifesting Me Wellness. And I'm just happy to continue to have these conversations, chatting about what's going on in our community, the things that we're experiencing, and just how we're feeling, and getting some love, especially out here in LA because we just got shut down again. So having a little community feels good right now because I don't think we're going anywhere anytime soon.
Yes. Um, word. And I know, because that was news. That's very well, sort of, kind of recently. I'm getting all the emails from businesses and stuff that had opened up. They were like, just kidding, we're not.
Yeah.
Um, so yes, very thankful for the ways that we can still connect, and excited to
Mm-hmm.
talk about intersectional wellness today, which I think is a really nice place to move from aligned activism last week. So yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think you initially brought up this topic, and when you said it, I was like, yes, this needs to be the topic of conversation at some point because it is such a big part of what's happening in our world and in the movement today. So I'm excited to just chat about where we're at with it, what we're hearing in the community as well, and yeah, and get some perspective from the community in the comments as well as how they're feeling about intersectional wellness.
Yes. So for folks watching, if you can maybe first share, what does um intersectionality, because that's kind of the word that is special today, right? What does that mean and look like for you? I will say that I approach it from a very academic standpoint, just because that's where I was first exposed to
Mm-hmm.
intersectionality and why that even matters. So, what I know of intersectionality is that it is a term that was developed by Kimberly Crenshaw, who is an amazing Black woman, author, professor, lawyer, I want to say. She's incredible.
Yeah.
Yes. And so she developed intersectionality as a way to give language to understanding the ways that our multiple identities, or like how systems of oppression really like interact together and impact on uh community and an
Right.
individual level. So when I think of intersectionality, that's what I'm thinking of, like the different ways that our identities and the conditions that can come along with that interact and show up in our lives. But what do you think of when you think of intersectionality or intersectional wellness?
Yeah, I'm glad you put that definition together. Because yeah, I think that's exactly what it is, and it sounds so pretty when you put it that way. But for me, it's just thinking about the different aspects of people, right? It's just how do you show up in this world, and what does that mean for you? And that can mean related to your gender, your sexuality,
Right.
your race or nationality. That can mean languages that you speak. That can mean your mental or physical health, your disability, or anything else that you identify with in this world that it impacts how you show up. That can even be like being a parent or not a
Right.
parent, being I don't know, an elder or a youth or whatever.
Yeah.
Like it's so many layers, but it's just all the different ways that we show up and present ourselves in this world that we identify with. And that we all have different definitions of what those things are, but that it
Mhm.
also impacts how we engage with the world and how the world engages with us.
Yes. Yes. And I love that you added in even like parent, elder, or maybe even I don't know, your job title might be a part of that.
Yes.
And I like that you enter that in because it makes me think that in some ways, like sometimes it doesn't always have to be based in like a strictly oppression type sense. I think that's what stood out to me when you were saying that, right? Like, because I think like parenthood is a very important intersection, right? That, right, a black mother's experience, black father's experience versus a non-black or a white mom's experience, right? Just to use
Right.
the most extreme. Um, those look very different, right? And they look different not because um, necessarily any one person is a better parent or whatever than the other, but that's a way where we're starting to see not only just like the different privileges that happen based off
Right.
of your identity, but sometimes it's just like even just a different position. Like you're just in a
Yeah.
different lane to keep that going from
Right.
last week. You're in a different lane than somebody else. So I like that you are identifying like, yeah, all the different ways that we show up,
Mhm.
they matter and they impact, right, how we view the world and ourselves, how maybe even the world views us. So
Yes.
yeah, super important to
Yeah.
consider.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think sometimes we forget about those intersections that may, like you said, that may not include what we view as oppressive, right?
Right.
We often talk about intersectionality, especially in academia, when we're talking about race and gender relations and sexuality, things of that nature.
Mm-hmm.
But how you show up in the world, every piece of that is important. If you are a parent, regardless of your race, your interaction with the world might be a little bit different than if you are not a parent. And then if you are a black parent, that changes then
Right.
the dynamic as well. So I think it's really just like adding all the different pieces of who you are and how that impacts what your world looks like and how the world views you.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I want to kick it to you on why, and I'm gonna answer this too, of course. Why do you think including a conversation of intersectionality matters? And I say that because, right, there are definitely different examples, moments of time where sometimes trying to be intersectional or inclusive, right, leads to, I've seen conversations of this is divisive or distracting or not
Mm.
helpful. So why do you think intersectionality, especially with our well-being, is important or matters? Or does it not? What do you think?
I think it definitely matters. I think it definitely matters. I think because it shifts how you are able
Mm-hmm.
to find wellness, the places that you can go to receive wellness, the places that you feel safe to be well, and also how you interact and how the world interacts with you, which also means the oppression that you experience, the stereotypes that you face, and the stigma that you face on a daily basis, which is going to impact your ability to be well. Like, if we don't talk about how, if we talk about just staying with the current times, like if we talk about how the pandemic, right? This virus is impacting people in general. Like, we're going to miss out on the opportunity to
Mm,
also talk about how certain communities are being impacted
right,
so much more than others,
right.
right? Like, we miss out on a conversation about how Black and Brown folks are being impacted way more,
Mm-hmm.
how Black and Brown folks are also less likely to be heard by doctors when they are talking about their symptomology, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so they're less likely to get treatment. We're
Yes.
going to miss out on talking about socioeconomic status. And so we're looking at who has access to go to the doctor, who has treatment options that are available to them. And then talking about parenting, like there are schools talking about opening up in a
Mm-hmm.
month and a half, and parents who have to go back to work, and parents who don't have anywhere to send their kids if the schools don't open up,
Right,
right? And so we are talking about so many different pieces that we then miss out on if we just choose to have the conversation from a general standpoint. Like, yes, there's a virus, it's out here, people are dying, we got to talk about that, but how does that also impact other people in different layers? And
mm,
I just named what, 3 or 4 there, but there are so many other ways that it's
right,
impacting other people in the community. Like, if you have already have health conditions, like how is that impacting you as a person? And the lack of access to resources, like, it is so important because it impacts how you are able to find wellness and how you are
yeah,
able to find what wellness looks like for you and people that you can go to. And I mean, it impacts everything.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, quite literally. And I like how you said that when we try to do like a one size fits all conversation or one size fits all wellness, that we're missing really awesome
Yeah.
opportunities to be asking different questions, to consider different ways to even approach different things, right?
Right.
And that it is by considering the different ways that people are impacted on really a systemic level that
Yeah.
we're able to begin to actually have a conversation that leads us closer to the root of
Right.
how things can shift so that more people are included. Because one of the things, so the example that I'm thinking of, especially that's come up, has been especially around like with BLM and it feeling divisive
Mm-hmm.
uh, to, I'm not going to even say ask, but to demand that our Black community, the Black community, also hold um, the lives of Black men, yes, also the lives of Black women, yes, also the lives
Yes.
of Black queer and trans folks, yes. And
Yes.
that I've seen sometimes when folks post like, all Black lives matter, we need to lift up these names as well, that it's been called divisive or distracting.
Yeah.
And so why intersectionality is so important, and why that argument doesn't really work is because there is no point where I am not a Black queer woman, right? And if
Right.
we are working towards moving towards a life that allows more space for liberation and breath, it's not just going to be the Black part of me that gets to do that, or all of a sudden the woman part of me is going to be a little bit more free, but the queer part of me just has to take a seat back. Like that doesn't, you know,
right.
like all of me, all of us comes through the door. You know what I
Yes.
mean? And so when we're saying that, to consider the lives of everyone in our community, it's not to be divisive or to do some sort of oppression Olympics of who has it worse or
Right.
anything like that.
Right.
But we're really asking, let's have conversations that will lead to a long-term, a sustainable shift, right? And that's not going to happen if we are not inviting everyone to be a part of the conversation like we're saying we really want to have, you know? So that definitely comes to mind of why and how intersectionality ends up being so important for our movements if we really want to have all of us get free.
Right. Right. And how can you say, let's just say, you know, further down the line, Black Lives Matter, we get everything that we are demanding in this moment, and you know, we fighting for Black men, and things come through, we're good, regulations have changed, but where does that now leave Black women? Where does that now leave Black queer folks? Where does that now leave Black trans folks? Where does that now leave Black folks who are disabled and feel like they are not included either? Like, how does that look for the rest of the Black community?
Yes.
And I hear a lot of this like fight of like, well, we got to stick to one thing at a time, like one movement at a time or one piece at a time because it's so important. Or we don't want to like bombard everybody with too much stuff. And I'm kind of like, well, I mean, just Black people is one movement. Like that is just, it's a solid thing. It doesn't have to like be, it doesn't have to be divided. It's being divided. And so we are also saying like, hey, what about the rest of the community? What about everyone else in this community that is not being included in what you are doing or what you are saying? And so I think like the opposite side of that is also true. Like, okay, it's divisive, but it only comes off divisive because of the fact that it was already divided. We didn't divide it. We're just asking for you to stop dividing it. Like, include everybody.
Right.
I don't understand why that's so challenging.
Yeah, let's do. And because exactly like where, if we were to get the things that we're asking for, where does that leave, you know, Black women, Black disabled folks, Black or just undocumented folks in general, you know what I mean? And that's why I feel these are conversations that are important, and we have to start from an all of us place, because otherwise we're going to just be recreating and repeating, right? A lot of the same violence, quite frankly, just now on other people. Now it's not you who has to be stressed out in the same way. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then that's a deeper question of like, do we actually want liberation, or do you just want to feel less uncomfortable? Or do you really have it in your heart you want all Black people to get free? You know?
Yes.
Very different feelings.
Yes. I think that's so real though, like the difference between we want resources and help and assistance for the entire community versus someone who is just looking to feel different, to be less uncomfortable, and to not have their experience. And that is a very different form of activism. Not saying that it's better or worse. Like if that's where you're at, that's where you're at. But you're not fighting for Black lives. You are fighting for you and your identity. And that's very different than fighting for a community and fighting for justice, right? Fighting for equity or equality or whatever it is that you're looking for in that. Like you are fighting for you and your identity. You're not fighting for the community. And that to me is like, okay, well, if that's what it is, then say that's what it is.
Right.
But don't say you're fighting for Black folks if you're not fighting for Black folks. Like, be real. That's it.
Right.
Yeah.
1,000% agree. And to recognize that this is a call in for all of us, because we all hold different layers and levels of privilege and oppression, right? So, like, I don't all of a sudden just have it easy because I identify as a Black queer woman. I also
Right.
insist in that I identify with my assigned gender at birth. I also am able-bodied, right? So
Right.
it is important for me to include disabled folks in the conversation when I am imagining what does freedom and what does this work look like. I am someone who has a certain amount of economic privilege, and that I am not
Right.
on survival mode, right? And so all of these different things are important for us to consider, the things that are on our minds, and also what are the things that are
Yeah.
not on your mind, right? And
Right.
that's, yeah, the benefits
Yeah.
of privilege is you don't have to think about certain things.
Yeah, absolutely. And that privilege piece is so important because I think that's where things are getting lost. It's
Hmm.
like, okay, like black men are being attacked. We can see that on video.
Right.
Yeah, but so are black women.
Yes.
And sometimes on video, sometimes not.
Right.
But like you may not see that because that is not your dynamic, that is not your experience. I
Hmm.
was having this conversation with my dad recently, and he was just sharing. He was like, well, I wonder how much more you are seeing or hearing about things that are happening to black women just because you are a black woman, and by nature
Hmm.
of that you are more inclined to engage with people or be a part of communities that are sharing that information. And I was
Hmm.
like, yes, that is true and that is factual, and I think that's
Hmm.
also a part of the problem, right? Like
Mm.
we are seeing more of what we identify with, which is
Hmm.
great and makes sense. Like logically, that makes sense.
Right.
And also, why are black men not sharing with other black men what's happening to black women,
Right.
right? Like, why is there not also a conversation of like, yo, did y'all hear about this black woman that just died? Like, why is that conversation also not
Right.
happening across groups? And not saying that like we as black women are sharing everybody, because there are groups of black women who are not sharing about black men or black
Right.
trans folks or what
Right.
have you.
Right.
But that conversation was just so interesting to me because I was like, I think you're right. I think that is the reality. We are
Mm.
being faced with our identification and what that is, and that
Mm.
is a privilege. You have
Hmm.
the privilege of being able to say as a black man that you just don't see it as often,
Right.
because in our world, things that are happening to women in general are just not being talked about at the same length as things that are happening to men. And then you add blackness on top of that.
Hmm. Hmm. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. And I think this being mindful of our time. I'm like, as soon as I'm like, this is so good, and then I look up and I'm like, damn, this is why folks got to come to the event at the end of this, because there is so
Yes.
much depth here. But that really connects me back to last week and us talking about aligned
Mhm.
activism, because of course it can feel overwhelming to be like, oh my gosh, I need to find all these different communities and throw
Right.
myself in there and educate myself on all of this. And that's a lot for anyone. Um, but when you make it a part of your life, like make it make sense for you in a way that is integrated. So what does that look like to begin to um, move as an activist and show up in your wellness and for others' wellness in a way that makes sense? So you might not be able to, be an expert, and nobody expects you to be an expert in
Right.
every
Right.
community. I'm not. I definitely am not. I know I have blind spots, and I think that that's okay. And you need
Yes.
to hold that, yes, I have blind spots. Let me be open to that. And how can I begin to shift in ways that are real, in ways that make sense for
Yes.
my life, that are aligned, right? So that I am able to begin to think differently and hold more and other people in the room, whether they are physically present or not. Um,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah. And I think that goes back to this idea that you mentioned earlier of like, it allows us to ask more questions. It allows us to be more curious about other things and other people and other experiences. And it's, again, it's not about like you have to be an expert or you have to know everything,
Right.
but it is about
Exactly.
also being open when it comes up. And I think
Yeah.
that's part of the issue that's happening now. It's like it's being said, oh, yeah, include these people, and people are getting defensive. Like, oh, that's
Mm-hmm.
divisive and what have you. It's like, no, be open to the conversation, be open to the dialogue, be open to the experience of someone else who is saying, I feel silenced, I feel erased, I don't feel
Mm-hmm.
included.
Mm-hmm.
And start to listen to how can I start to include this person and help them to not feel erased.
Yeah.
And especially as Black folks, like we know what that looks like.
Right.
Like we know
Right.
what that feels like. And I think that is my biggest frustration is like we know what that looks like. Like just
Right.
include folks. When they say
Right.
I'm not being included, hear them. Don't perpetuate the violence that's been put on us.
Yeah. Yeah. Which we've been taught, right? So I also want to hold that, like, maybe right now, uh, aligned activism, intersectional wellness looks like just being present and honest about what about other folks saying, I would like you to see me and consider me. What is that touching? What is that triggering that
Yeah.
is frustrating or whatever emotion comes up for you, and just without judgment. Like, I feel like that needs a
Yes.
space for you to be like, it bothers me when so and so says this because of
Yeah.
whatever, and that is also such a part of the work, because without it actually meaning something to you, then it's just performance otherwise, right?
Yes. Yes.
So yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Ugh, this is so nourishing and restorative. Whenever we get on here, I'm like, yes,
Oh no. Yes.
yes,
Yeah.
yes. So, are there any closing thoughts on your mind about what we've been talking about today, and or otherwise?
I think for me, it's just coming back to this place of like just being open, open
Mm-hmm.
to listening, opening to acknowledging. Because I truly believe that a lot of what's going on is just people are so defensive and um, hurt. We just hurt. Everybody just
Right,
hurt, right? And
right,
so we're just out here
right.
operating from that space, but just inviting people to just come in and just listen, be open to listening, opening your heart and your ears to really listening and hearing about other people's experiences. Because I think that
Mm-hmm.
is the most that we can ask of people, or the least that we can ask of people, actually
Mm-hmm.
the least that we can ask of people in this moment. And hopefully along the way you find other ways to be more inclusive, but just be
Mm-hmm.
open, please.
Yes, yes, yes. Open to others, open to yourself. Absolutely.
Yes.
Uh,
Yes.
well, this was incredible. This was amazing.
As always.
As always. So, y'all, thank you for everybody who showed up with us today. Be sure to hop on with us next Wednesday, same time, same place, and we're gonna keep this conversation going. Would love to know from folks as well, what intersectionality means to you, looks like for you, and how shifting might look like for you as well moving forward in a more intersectional way.
Yeah,
Yeah. Okay.
absolutely. Thank you all for
Okay.
coming. We'll see y'all next week.
See y'all. Bye.
Bye.